So if you are not familiar with the Sunrise Cup, you can definitely go to PvPoke. It's a platform where you can look at the meta and look at what are the top mons. You just need to go to rankings and select Silph Sunrise Cup. So at the outset, the cup, according to me, is divided into 3 simple formats, which is flyers, a category for flying, all the flying Pokemon, and anti-flyers. This is a category for all the Pokemon that beats the flyers. And the third is going to be anti-tanks. These are Pokemon that are going to beat your anti-flying Pokemons, which are usually tanks. That's the basic 3 classification. And if you look at flyers, there's going to be Mantine, Skarmory, Pelipper, Noctowl, Altaria. These are flyers that you're very familiar with. You'll see them quite a bit in GBL also. And how to counter these flyers is going to be anti-flyers. These are going to include Pokemon like Galarian Stunfisk, Cantonian Stunfisk. What else? Maybe some play for Wigglytuff, I guess. And the anti-tanks in the meta that are going to be counter users mostly. And they're going to be, let's say, Vigoroth and Obstagoon. What are your thoughts about, let's say, this simple description of the cup, Tati?
I think that that's a pretty good description of the meta. But I think for the anti-tank, as you suggested the term would be, I think the Mud Boys have a lot to do in that role of the meta, and I think they'll be very, very prevalent in taking down, for example, Stunfisks.
Yeah.
And but basically, I agree with those 3 simple classifications of the mons that are going to be in contention in this meta.
Yeah, exactly. And I sort of forgot one tiny niche. It's going to be for fire types. Basically 2 Pokemon, which is going to be Alolan Marowak and Victini. I did play against a Victini yesterday during practice, and it was very tough to maneuver around. There are some matchups that you'll need a Victini for, but I would not be spending my 100,000 Stardust on giving my Victini a second move, that's for sure.
Yeah, I believe Victini also, it has some solid anti-tank play and also anti-grass play.
Yeah.
And it can form some pretty nice cores in this meta as well. So I think it has play, but it is quite an expensive investment.
Yeah, definitely. First off, let's talk about the flyers. I guess the main flyer in this cup is going to be Mantine, as the ranking says. It's mostly because of the fact it picks up a lot of the zero shield matchups against the flyers and can apply a lot of pressure and shield pressure by using the bubble beam bait. It can also, let's say, come out of certain matchups with a little bit of energy advantage, and then you bubble beam the next Pokemon. This will further flip the remaining matchups. What are your thoughts on Mantine? Do you like it? Have you used it before?
I have tried it a little bit in my Sunrise Cup practice battles, and I've been liking it. It's a really safe sort of one to use in this, especially if there are no electric types in the opponent's team. And I also like that you mentioned that you can maybe defeat something with Mantine, and then you have just that amount of health left that you can maybe throw the 1 debuff into the subsequent mon.
Yeah,
that's coming to take the rest of the Mantine down.
Yeah, that's something that can flip, I think, entire matches on its head.
It definitely can.
The next, I guess,
but it is still a little bit clumsy if you want to do that water type damage in like closing sort of scenarios. Then it's going to be a little bit clunky.
Yeah. Mantine is not a closer, at least according to me. I think it's a very good lead and a good safe swap. That was Mantine. Next up is, I guess, the next flyer that everybody knows and has nightmares of is Skarmory. My main reservations with Skarmory is, I think, we're going to be seeing a lot of Altaria and quite a bit of Vigoroth. Skarmory loses to Vigoroth in 2 shields and also to Altaria in 2 shields. That's something that's sorry?
But yeah, I was just going to comment there, but I think that mainly describes just how absurd Vigoroth is with 2 shields.
Yeah, exactly. Ideally, I think it's one of the best closers in this meta.
Yeah.
But anyway, we'll discuss Vigoroth when it comes to Vigoroth. But yeah,
Sure.
the next flyer, which is also rank 6 in PvPoke, is Altaria. I guess one of the main reasons that Altaria is rank 6 is if Mantine throws the bubble beam and you don't shield, you're probably going to win that matchup in a really good fashion. But if you look at PvPoke sims, something that I really need to point out, and everybody should be careful about, is the fact that PvPoke will show you that a Mantine can take it down straight Ice Beam, but this is going to be CMP dependent. And also, for example, if you have a good IV Mantine, you lose, you win CMP. What? But I think Altaria picks up this matchup mostly because it gets to throw a sky attack. I do not understand. Maybe it was me doing something wrong, but yeah. Oh wow. Okay,
I
it loses in.
think that could be also very reliant on the charge move timing with the Altaria.
Yeah.
Maybe it can do something like 1 or 2 Dragon Breaths in. I'm not sure there visually if the charge move timing is optimal in that case. In Altaria's case, that could also very easily flip the matchup.
Yeah. But I've always noticed when I'm playing this matchup, especially now with how the game is working, is that sometimes you kind of the Altaria gets in a few more Dragon Breaths, and then you lose when you're playing a Mantine. Because I played Mantine in GBL for a long time, and I used to try to go straight Ice Beam and get the win, but I never got the win, unfortunately.
Oh, okay.
So yeah, it happens. Yes, in the Sims it shows that it wins, but you have to be really careful in this matchup. Even if Mantine, even if Mantine sneaks in a few, even if the Altaria sneaks in a few Dragon Breaths, you just lose.
Yeah, true. And it's very easy to receive those free Dragon Breaths in this sort of state that the game is in. Definitely.
Exactly. Like when you throw, you just wait for a few, even half a second. That's 1 Dragon Breath. So.
Yeah.
All right. The next one that is actually one of my most favorite mons. I think I've been saying it since Sorcerer's Cup is Noctowl. I really like this mon. Yeah, especially if you have a bulky Noctowl, you could flip a lot of matchups in Sorcerers. What are your thoughts on Noctowl?
Well, I think Noctowl would have better play if maybe the fire types would be more prominent in the meta, which I think they are not going to be that prevalent. But I think the main issues with the Noctowl is that it can't deal with, for example, Vigoroth that well, and the very much of the Mud Boy matchups are also like not that great, and also with the Obama Snow is not that great of a matchup. But I think I think Obama Snow still can deal with a lot of the flyers as well. But it's certainly not mon to skip on or to sleep with.
Yeah. Mostly because I think Noctowl gets its play because, yes, you can play this meta without a fire type, but I think, at least for me, I would like to have a fire type on my team. Mostly because of the fact that Obama Snow is really popular. And if you have an Alolan Marowak, you can just check the Obama Snow. I did play quite a lot of scrims yesterday, and people were bringing a lot of Obama Snows, and if once they get switch locked on a Marowak, it's just game over.
Yeah, Obama Snow can't do anything against Marowak.
Yeah, and
because that's true. That's a good point. That if you don't have a fire type, then basically Obama Snow can do pretty much. Can do something against pretty much anything and could be at least okay.
Exactly.
Yeah, even Obama Snow seems to be the dominant grass type in this meta, so I think fire type is still pretty solid play. But I don't think there are certainly teams out there that are not going to have fire types as well.
Yeah, exactly. But yeah, well, I guess that's the only reason you have an Octal is to deal with the fire types.
I think so. It's such a good a lot of Marowak counter, but also there's also the issue that the fire types are not so safe then against the mud boys, and that could lessen the effect that fire types have in the meta, and in that case also the effect that a Noctowl would probably have. But I think we'll just see how the meta develops
exactly
in the coming weeks.
And let's say last but not the least is a flying type Pokemon that everybody likes to call the flying toilet seat. That's Pelipper. I have used Pelipper a bit for this meta, and I find it really, really useful, mostly because it's one of the mons that can, let's say, does not lose to Vigoroth. That's important. Does not lose to the Mud Boys. Can beat the Galarian Stunfisk, which is going to be everybody's biggest anti-flyer in the one seal scenario. And I guess that's where Pelipper gets most of its play. But where it loses out is that it loses to all the other flyers in the meta. And that's something that you might have to understand when playing Pelipper. It may be able to pick up the Skarmory matchup in the 2 shields, but I'm not sure.
Yeah. It can flip certainly a lot of matchups with some energy, which is a good trait to have as a safe switch, which I think that Pelipper is going to be amazing in this meta, in that role. And also I think the one issue that could be also there, for example, Pelipper and Mantine have that same typing going on, and can do a lot of the same type of things. Other one has the flying type fast move, another one has the water type fast move. But I think that the main difference there is that the Mantine has that Ice Beam to threaten the Altaria, and the Pelipper doesn't have that luxury in its arsenal. But I think that Pelipper is still such a flexible mon in this meta to use. I really love my Seagull. no matter the format, wherever I play it, I'm just in love with it.
I really liked it in season 3 of GBL. I calibrated at 2,400 at the start, even though I had like 2,600 elo before. But I just used Pelipper a lot, and people don't understand what is it called? Understand how to use it quite a bit, and do not understand how spammy Pelipper is.
Yes, it is. And Weather Ball is such an amazing damage per energy move that
exactly
it can spam that really quickly. It's a really nice neutral damage coming out of to a lot of things.
Yeah, especially since it's just a 35 energy move, and that's too much. That's at some point we might see a nerf for Weather Ball, but let's hope not before the cup is in flow.
Yeah, hopefully not.
Okay, yeah. Now that we've covered some of the flyers, let's look. We're going to go to anti-tanks, basically mons that are going to. Actually, no. Let's go towards anti-flyers. It makes more sense this way. So anti-flyers, I guess the top meta anti-flyer is definitely going to be Galarian. I think it needs at least 2 to this mon, or else it's going to just run through your team. Mostly because of the fact that, let's say, Rock Slide is is good damage, and Earthquake, even if it is resisted, is going to do quite a lot of damage if you do not shield.
Yeah, like that moveset is just bonkers with
exactly.
It can deal with pretty much anything, especially if you have some sort of a energy lead going into a matchup, or maybe a shield advantage or something. It can deal with pretty much anything, and it's also one of the probably the most reliable anti-flyer in this meta, which I think there are not a ton of. So I think I think it's also been very prevalent in the GBL meta recently in GBL. So I think that will basically be in everyone's team.
Exactly.
I think. So you have to prepare for it, have to prepare your counters to it.
Exactly. And I think the best way to deal with it is have definitely 2 counters for the Galarian Stunfisk in your team. And also, if you choose a flyer or if you choose 2 flyers, you need to make sure that your flyers have some play against the Galarian Stunfisk. How are you going to play this matchup? That's going to be very important. Yes,
I agree.
MANTINE is amazing flyer. It has a lot of play, but I think winning Mon, at least for me, is going to be either Galarian Stunfisk or Vigoroth, and how you counter Vigoroth.
Yeah, I agree.
Other anti-flyers with specific roles basically is going to be, let's say, Wigglytuff, I think. Wigglytuff is going to be your 2-shield boogeyman in this meta. I think other than for the flyers, other than Skarmory, it's going to go through everything.
Yeah, basically.
And
also,
that's one. Yeah, go on.
well, there are generally like only the fire types and maybe a couple of steel types that really resist charm, and for anything else, it can just be that 2-shooted boogeyman, as you just said, and do a lot of damage and force a lot of switch advantages with that 2 shields.
Yeah, exactly. Like for example, you lead your Altaria into an Abomasnow. You just switch into Wiggles, and then whatever they switch in, if it's not a steel type, you double shield and you get back switch advantage, and then you can work around. If you really value switch advantage with 2 shields.
And with Altaria, you usually do value that switch advantage quite a lot because it's such a black and white mon to use most of the time.
Yeah, exactly. Any other anti-flyers that you think is going to have a place in the meta? Only other thing that comes to my mind is, let's say, Ferrothorn. Mostly because it has good play against, let's say, MANTINE and Pelipper. And Thunderbolts. And the Thunder threat against the Skarmory, even though it loses in the 1 shield. But yeah.
And it also does surprisingly well against Altaria as well, because it has that steel type to resist that Dragon Breath damage. But that's a weird thing to say, really, about the grass type, isn't it?
Yep,
to be an anti-flyer. And also, just before you said Ferrothorn, my other thought was another grass type to be an anti-flyer, Abomasnow.
Yeah. But I think Abomasnow is less of an anti-flyer, at least for me. Mostly because of the fact that, yes, it does do very well in the 2 shield scenario, but I mean in the 1 shield scenario. But when you push it to 2 shields, you're not going. You have to shield them on. It can be, and that's something that I am not really happy. I like my shields, but yes, it is also very glassy, very glassy.
Especially if you use the shadow version of it.
Exactly. Yeah, and the reason why Shadow, I guess, if you guys are not familiar with, is ranked higher than a normal Abomasnow, is because it can pick up the Galarian Stunfisk and the Skarmory matchup in the 1 shield.
And I think that's a very important thing to notice about the differences between the non-shadow versus shadow.
And let's say at some point you want to pick between a shadow Abomasnow and a normal Abomasnow, I think you should really look into the Galarian Stunfisk matchup. If you want to cover the G-Fisk, you can cover it with a normal Abomasnow in the 2 shield scenario.
Yeah.
If you want to cover Skarmory, you have to get a shadow Abomasnow. There is no other option.
Yes. And that's I should maybe say that it is still you can deal with a Skarmory with a Shadow Abomasnow, but that is still only a win into 1 shield. But still, it's better than the normal Abomasnow.
Exactly. And it's also a pretty close winner. It's not something that's set
It is
in
very
stone.
close. Yeah, like
If you, yeah, even if if you switch into a Skarmory with with the shadow, you lose.
yeah,
I think so.
yes.
It's
Yes,
not
you can't
entirely.
switch into a Skarmory with the Shadow of Abomasnow, really.
Yeah. So if you're running in shadow, it's kind of like, at least for me, if I see a shadow Abomasnow, I usually lead. I'm definitely going to lead my Vigoroth or let's say a Shadow Abomasnow counter, because
Mm.
what I've noticed from playing quite a lot is if you have one, they usually lead it. It's like a default setting. I think in
Very often,
Sorceress,
yeah.
yeah, and I think if you like in I think it was Voyager, if somebody had a Hypno, they were going to lead it. I don't know why, but it's usually like that.
Some people in the chat are asking what you guys' thoughts are on STEELIX for this cup.
SteelX is very, very, I think it's special. With Thunderfang, yes, it does quite a lot of work against Mantine. But I don't know. It gets countered by Gfisk. It gets countered by Vigoroth, Obstagoon. Mantine will. Skarmory, I think, still has a
Mm.
play with SteelX if you land Bravebird.
Yeah, I think
Altaria
about
can
that.
beat it, I
Yeah,
think.
yeah. Well, it kind of depends on the moves that if you run that Thunderfang or Dragon Tail as the fast move.
Mm-hmm.
But in general, I think like the TLDR answer from me is that STEELIX is a worse Galarian Stunfisk.
Fair point.
It has the same typing, but it has an inferior moveset.
Yeah,
But I think
and you go on. Sorry.
and I think that you mentioned the quite a nice niche that maybe, just maybe, Steelix could have, is that Thunderfang,
Yeah.
because Mantine and Pelipper, those water flyers, can deal with Stunfisk pretty well. But if Steelix has that Thunderfang, Steelix is just going to destroy both of those.
Exactly.
So I think that's the one niche that Steelix could have. But otherwise, I think Stunfisk is just better.
Yeah, definitely. And I guess if you can see my screen, you might also notice that it loses to Abamas now. And yeah, as a steel type, you're not supposed to lose to grass.
Yeah, you don't want to be in that
Yeah, and
spot. No.
yeah, and another big thing. I mean, this is with Dragon Tail. I think it's going to be worse if you run Thunderfang, because Abamas no resist that too. I would like to see how the Altaria matchup is. If there's no Dragon Tail, I think it could be a loss.
I would assume it's a loss.
Yeah, it's a loss. So yeah,
Altar is just
you don't want to lose
too bonkers.
Yeah, exactly, exactly. That's another thing. If you run Thunderfang, you don't want to lose to Altaria as a steel type. And if it's going to be your only steel type, it's definitely definitely not going to have a place in my team. If you have to beat the Flyers, you have to beat the Flyers. That's your job as a steel type. If you don't, bye bye.
Yeah, I agree.
All right. Now coming to anti-tanks. I guess for me, the meta-defining Pokemon is definitely Vigoroth. I am building my teams to have Vigoroth counters in them. So I think for me, this is going to be the best safe swap in the beta. I think with a few counter advantages, you can really push a lot of the mons in the meta to the red. And that is an amazing skill to have. Plus, Vigoroth is bulky. It's pretty bulky for what it is.
Yeah.
Not a lot of counter users come with this much bulk, I think.
No, certainly not. And that stab body slam spam with the counter fast move damage and energy generation, it's going to do amazing things every time.
And one of the interesting things is that, let's say, yes, we look at anti-tanks, it's going to be, as I said, it's going to be Vigoroth, Obstagoon, because they're both counter users, and then the Mud Boys. An interesting thing about Vigoroth is that it beats the Mud Boys. So basically, it's the king of anti-tanks.
It kind of is, yeah.
Yeah. And two interesting matchups that I would like to showcase to you guys is, let's say, Vigoroth against Skarmory. Yes, you lose in the one shield, but if you double shield, you win against Skarmory. And it's a very good win. You win with, let's say, 37 HP. And in most cases, you can get to another body slam. And that's...
Yeah, certainly.
Yeah. And that's something that's very dangerous. I think it's the same with Altaria.
I think I think you can even that PV poke shows that you throw the last body slam, but I think you can just counter down with two shields.
With Skarmory. No, I don't.
Skarmory. Sorry. Yeah.
With Altaria, maybe.
Yeah.
Maybe.
Yeah.
No, I don't think so. You need to throw. And there's you have to throw.
But I think you end up that matchup in two shields with a little bit of energy left to throw at the to the next mon.
Exactly.
But yeah, against Skarmory, it's a different story for sure.
Yeah. And this is another one is one of the few reasons why you really need to run a bulky Altaria. If you look at my screen, you pick up the two shield matchup against the Vigoroth. If you have a really rank 1 Altaria, you are left with like 1 HP and you throw.
Oh, okay.
Yeah, but you need a rank
how
1.
energy dependent is that? How many turns is that to maybe turn that matchup? If, for example, Vigoroth is the opponent's safe swap, can you switch into Altaria and force the 2 shield switch advantage?
Well, for example, if let's say how I'm going to play this is that if opponent switches in Vigoroth, I'm always going to do at least 1 or 2 turns of damage, and then I will switch into my Altaria, because if the Vigoroth ends up with like 7 HP, if there's not this 7 HP, you can win by just Dragon Breathing it down and not throwing the last move.
Yeah.
But
I think if they do not get to the last body slam by gaining a little bit of that little bit of energy, then it's fine. Yeah, for sure.
Yeah, I think they need three counters. But even if they get they need 3 counters, and to get to a CMP tie. But then again, this is a very special circumstance where you have a really the top of the line Altaria. You need a rank 1 Altaria.
Yeah.
Most of us, I don't think, have it. If you do, please run it. Do not go for your attack weighted Altaria.
Yeah. But attack weighted still has maybe one merit that I can maybe discuss a little bit later. But But actually, in my stream chat, they're also asking for Vigoroth, what movesets should you run? So Brick Break or Bulldoze as the second charge move, in addition to a Body Slam.
Yeah, definitely it's Bulldoze. I don't think Brick Break has a play. Bulldoze, I guess it's because number one, yes, you can hit the Galarian Stunfisk with super effective with Brick Break, but Bulldoze gives you quite a lot of coverage. Mostly, let's say if they're running an Alolan Marowak, you need Bulldoze. If they're running a Victini, you need Bulldoze. Yes, Body Slam does quite damage to Victini, but not enough. Like I found out yesterday, it doesn't do quite a lot of damage to Victini. I thought Victini was more Glacier than it is, but it's not.
I think, if you're honest, both of those charge moves are going to be very rarely used because they're not that great, and Body Slam is. So
exactly,
you don't need those too often, and I think the main pro of a Vigoroth that it's such a safe mon to use in any sort of situation in this meta. And if you don't run Bulldoze and the opponent has a lot of Marowak, and then you are just screwed if you are Vigoroth and if you end up in that matchup. But with Bulldoze, you can at least do something against it.
Exactly. That said, yes, Vigoroth is a normal type Pokemon, but in Vigoroth versus Alolan Marowak matchup, Alolan Marowak is still favored to win.
Yeah, it is. Like it is
Unless
generally a Vigoroth counter.
exactly,
Marowak.
unless if you're a Vigoroth player, you'd want to bait with a body slam, and if you're a Alolan Marowak player, you just go straight Bone Club. The
Yes.
only scenario where an Alolan Marowak will lose to a Vigoroth is if it shields the body slam. You have two chances as a Vigoroth to get the bait, but whenever I play Marowak against Vigoroth, I don't shield the first two.
Yeah.
Then you just win. There's no win condition for the Vigoroth.
Yes. Also, one of my viewers is also asking why no hype for Articuno, ridiculously good in 2 shields.
Yeah, well, it is ridiculously good in 2 shields, but then again, you need to spend 2 shields on Articuno, and it's not that tanky of a Mohon for me to want to spend 2 shields. I would spend 2 shields on Vigoroth because I know it's going to end up with quite a lot of HP, and still pull out matches it's not supposed to win. I'm not very familiar with 2 shield matchups of Articuno. Which matchups does it pull off? That it's not supposed to win is something that I would be interested in, actually. Maybe your viewer can help.
I think it can even beat Stunfisk in 2 shields.
Oh, that's interesting.
I believe so, but I think the main issue is that, well, I have to also agree that I don't know the Articuno 2 shield matchups that well. But I think the one issue in that could be that maybe you need to invest a lot of shields in that in terms of the opponent. Maybe opponent can get a shield advantage from that as well. And that could also be dangerous given what type of mon they decide to put in the field to get that little bit of energy, and with also that shield advantage. That could also be dangerous then, even though you get the 2 shielded win.
Oh, you don't get. I'm just looking at the Sims. If you look at my screen, you can see it loses to Galarian Stunfisk in the
okay,
2 shields.
it does. All right, yeah. Rockslide just does that much. Okay.
Exactly. So I'm not sure if I would want to invest in this one, especially because it's 100,000. Then you need to have Hurricane, which I guess is important for quite a lot of the meta coverage. That's going to be legacy. I'm not sure if people have under 1,500 Articuno with the legacy Hurricane.
Yeah,
I don't.
You would need to invest an Elite TM on it.
Yeah. So that's going to be Elite TM at 100,000 Stardust.
Yeah.
For iffy matchups. No. Yeah. If I'm going to invest 100,000, I'd much rather be powering up my Vigoroth from 10 CP to 1,500 than Articuno from 1,450 to 1,500. At least that's how I look at it. That's my point of view, actually.
Yeah. At least the one viewer that suggested it says that it can beat all the Mud Boys and all the Flyers, Vigoroth and Obstagoon in 2 shielded scenarios. That's the main pro with the Articuno. I would maybe not say that. Please don't do it. I'm not quite there yet, but certainly study its matchups and what does it maybe do with straight Icy Wind, and and how many of those are maybe debuff. Well, they always get the debuff, but like what kind of matchups can you win against the just straight Icy Winds, and whether you end up in a shield disadvantage in a lot of those scenarios. I think that's the key issue, but it could fit in someone's team for sure. I see it.
Yeah, exactly. It's a good fit if you build around it, but I think the main problem is, what is it called? Let's say let's say you're playing me and you swap in your Articuno and you're going to definitely invest 2 shields. I will not invest any shields on my Vigoroth. I'm just going to body slam you, and you have to invest 2 shields because I'm going to get to body slam before Icy Wind, I think. 5,
I believe so, yes.
4? Yeah, definitely. So I guess that's the only thing. Another, let's say from Discord chat, I see people want to talk about Zapdos. I think it's a good mon.
Oh, okay.
I do think it's a good mon, mostly because of the fact that it's one of those anti-flyers that can that deal with Skarmory pretty well.
And those
With
water flying types.
exactly the water flying types are walled. When I was making my first team with for Sunrise Cup, I had both Galarian Stunfisk, both the Stunfisks on my team.
Yeah.
Yes, I think the having access to electric moves is something that's important. But yeah, you'll have to figure out a way. But for me, again, Zapdos is expensive, and I'm not going to invest. Definitely not. At least for me, not Elite TM worthy. I have so many other mons where I'm going to spend my Elite TM on. Definitely not going to be a 1400 CP, not so tanky Zapdos.
Yeah.
Because no, yeah.
For now, I am kind of looking at it, to be honest. For the because there are really not that much to counter the safe switch Pelipper's and the Mantines. But there's also the issue that whether you should use maybe normal one, maybe shadow one, and the one, like the biggest disadvantage of those electric flying types are that it gets totally walled by the Galarian Stunfisk that it's going to be on basically everyone's team.
Yeah.
So
what
for
about
example,
Lugia?
if you counter that safe switch Pelipper or Mantine and you beat it, that's great, fine. But then Galarian Stunfisk can load up so much, like as much energy as it wants after that.
Exactly. Drill Peck is a good move, but it's not the best move for a flying type.
Yeah.
But
it's still good that it can at least do something against those Obama snows and stuff like that.
Yeah.
Even though it is like those ice moves are super effective against it.
Yeah. And some from the chat are asking about Lugia. Lugia is tanky, but we need to get Caleb Peng to play Lugia once in a Sunrise Cup and figure out how to use it.
I've been practicing with it a little bit.
Really?
Because I have. It has that Hydro Pump.
Yeah, exactly.
Stunfisk, and it can if it gets that through with maybe just a little bit of energy advantage, you can flip that matchup.
I'm gonna check actually. Lugia.
It is still definitely favorable against Stunfisk for sure, and it is also very reliable Vigoroth safe switch counter.
Yeah, fair enough. It resists counter, and it's a by default it's a very, very tanky mon.
Yeah, it even double resists the counter because flying and psychic.
Flying, yeah.
Yeah.
But oh wow, it beats Galarian Stunfisk, by the way. CMP tie Hydro Pump, straight Hydro Pump.
Is that default IVs?
Yeah, default IVs.
Okay. I've seen it with the rank 1, so that shows just a little bit of difference. So
yeah,
if I remember
rank
correctly.
Rank 1 survives the Hydro Pump to kill.
Yeah. So a little bit IV dependent as well. That matchup for sure. But I think those two merits are pretty good for a mon to have in this meta.
Yeah. Oh, that's actually pretty interesting. I'm gonna give my Lugia from Sinister Cup a go.
Yeah, and it can do a lot of the things that flying types are supposed to do, I guess.
Yeah. But yeah, fair enough.
And it can even run pretty even against Altaria as well.
Yeah, because both are tanky, and I guess Sky Attack is
Sky
neutral.
Attack yes, yeah, Sky Attack is amazing.
Yeah. Let's see.
So that's also one mon. So I think that's also one mon that you should not sleep on. Definitely.
Yeah. Yeah, definitely. Lugia. Interesting. Okay. Now that we can finally get past Vigoroth, let's look at Obstagoon. What are your thoughts on Obstagoon?
It would be really scary to use because of that Vigoroth.
Yeah.
But maybe if you get that out of the way, like for example, you maybe bait their Vigoroth out somehow, then you can maybe run Obstagoon, and then it's a pretty safe-ish mod to use after that.
Yeah.
Because probably not a lot of other counter users in this meta that are going to really hard counter it. And it can do pretty well against a lot of the flyers even, especially if you get that buff from the Night Slash.
Exactly. If you get the boost, you just double shield the Obstagoon and it will just take out most teams.
Yeah. I think
Another thing. Sorry.
If you can fit that to a team, and if you can avoid Vigoroth with it, I think it could be pretty reliable.
Exactly. Probably a double counter strategy, I guess.
Yeah,
to have both of them on the team.
Not?
Because there are no hard counters for these two, in the meta, from what I realize and see, is that, yes, you have counters, but they're all soft counters. So if you have two counter users, Obstagoon and Vigoroth, it's going to be, I guess as the meta evolves, we're going to see more and more Wigglytuff in teams, mostly to counter, let's say, Vigoroth and Obstagoon.
Yeah. And if you remember from the Jungle Cup as well, you need an attack weighted one as a Wigglytuff to really counter that Vigoroth as well.
Yeah.
I don't think the stat product Wigglytuff doesn't do that job as well.
Yeah, no, I was really looking for the attack weighted Wigglytuff, and I have one, so I'm gonna run that.
That's cool. That's cool.
Because you don't need bulk as a charmer,
It's mainly about the charm damage.
Yeah. Exactly.
Same thing for the Razor Leafers.
Yeah. So yes, another let's say less important anti-tanks I'm gonna talk about again is Mudboys. They're going to be Wishcash and Swampert, I guess.
Quagsire as well, but
yeah, Quag always gets less love than it should. But yeah,
it does. It does.
It's just Swampert is so good that you don't want to run a Quagsire. Mostly, I think Swampert, if you have good enough IVs, can beat a Skarmory. That is really good news, and it can threaten. Swampert also has a lot of coverage with Sludge Wave. I think Quagsire has access to Acid Spray. That's not as good of a coverage as Sludge Wave would be, I think.
Against grasses, certainly.
Exactly.
But I think one advantage that Quagsire does have is that Stone Edge.
Yeah.
For those a lot of the flyers, especially those water flying types, that could be very much a nuisance against a lot of teams. So that Stone Edge does a lot of damage against those, and it can beat those matchups that maybe a lot of the other Wishcash and Swampert can maybe struggle against.
Yeah, that's something that's really good about Quagsire. As you said, it's Stone Edge. I think a Stone Edge Quagsire can beat a Mantine in the one shield scenario.
Yeah, it can.
Two shields, I guess Mantine can straight bubble down. I'm not sure. I simmed it for Forest Cup. I don't remember exactly, but it's Mantine Quag. One shield, two shield. Yeah. Well, could be close. Yeah, see? Two shield Mantine can beat it. Straight bubble beam. So,
right. Yeah.
But yes, it is a very interesting mon.
I think if you want to use if you want to use the Mudboy, you have to kind of weigh the pros and cons of the different Mudboys and what kind of coverage do you want. Like, do you want to have that maybe that potential grass nuke with the Sludge Wave with Swampert and that amazing Hydro Cannon spam? Or maybe you want that Blizzard against those maybe Altarias, for example, with the Wishcash? Or do you want maybe more of a solid coverage against some of the flying types with Stone Edge, maybe? So what kind of coverage do you want from that Mudboy? I think that's the main question you want to ask if you want to run a Mudboy, which I think are very solid in this meta, for sure.
Yep, definitely. Question from Pratt. Is
Mhm.
Stunfisk not a mud boy?
Here is one of my, well, maybe not my favorite topics, but certainly that I am pretty passionate about. Stunfisk is a mud boy.
No, he's not.
It
I don't think
really
so.
is.
No, I refuse to accept it. Mud boys don't die to mud boys.
Tell that
Right.
to tell that to Wishcash against Swampert.
Fair enough, but you can still land a blizzard and do well.
Well, yeah, yeah. But that's just a little bit of fun with the community.
Fair enough. Yeah. Okay, that's the overall meta. If at this point, I think it's safe if we can take some questions from the chat.
Certainly.
So maybe we can take some more questions from, let's say, from your Twitch and some from the Discord. After which, then sometimes what I do for my community is I tend to build teams for players if they're interested.
Yeah.
So that would also be like, I will ask them what are their 3 favorite mons in the meta, and then I would build around those mons, and show them my thinking process, basically for them to learn to team build later.
Yep. Sounds good.
So let's try to take some questions. Any questions, guys?
Yeah, please share in the Discord or in my stream's chat.
Yeah.
If you have any sort of questions.
How's Lainoon here?
How's Lainoon here?
So about Lainoon, unfortunately, I'm not very familiar with this mon. It's all in all, Obstagoon is a better Lainoon, I think.
Okay, interesting. What kind of job would Lainoon do that can't be done with anything else? It can deal with mud boys, yeah, certainly with the grass knots, and it has thunder against those some of the flyers out there.
But I think it can't go straight thunder, can it? It needs to bait with grass knot, because I think Skarmory
maybe depends on the mon that you're facing.
Yeah.
But yeah, thunder is a pretty high energy move to throw, for sure. But Shadow Claw is a nice fast move to have, certainly. But yeah, it's going to be. It is. I think it's still pretty safe. But there's always the issue with the Vigoroth if you run any other normal type that you have to be careful about.
Yeah, and that's usually something that you need to consider when you're thinking about a mon. Yes, it can have a lot of good matchups, but it's not in the meta because it's probably going to lose really bad to some of the top mons in the meta. And for example, Vigoroth is, as we had discussed before, is going to be a top mon. You're going to see, if you're going to go for a 7-rounder, I can assure you now that you are going to see Vigoroth in 70% of the teams.
Yeah, I would assume so.
So if you throw in your Lainoon as a safe swap, you just lose your game there, and that's not something you'd want. It's just 6 places you have, and each of your places is important.
Yeah.
And Lainoon is not.
Yeah. Maybe you can do something like we discussed with the obstacle. That maybe you can bait out the Vigoroth in some other matchup, and then the Lainoons and Obstagoons and stuff can be a little bit more safer. Usually.
Yeah, that's a good way to go about it. Driftblim. Yeah.
Driftblim, excellent Vigoroth counter.
Exactly. It just destroys Vigoroth.
It does destroy Vigoroth, and can also debuff a lot of things with that Icy Wind. Can also beat a lot of things with even straight Icy Wind, and maybe can even throw those nuke Shadow Balls. And doesn't do horribly against that Stunfisk either.
Yeah.
I kind of like it, to be honest.
Yeah. Yeah, it's a good mon. Only drawbacks I see is that Obstagoons, Abomasnows, and Wigglytuffs. What we will need to look at before, let's say, if you're going to have your tournament early, go in with Drifblim. If you're going to have a tournament later, please look at how the meta is going to evolve. And if the
Yes,
meta is
totally.
pushing more towards Obstagoon over Vigoroth, then I would not bring my Drifblim. If the meta is going to be pushing more towards Abomasnows, I'm not going to bring my Drifblim. So it's going to be exactly on how the meta is evolving.
Yeah,
One of the main things is I think Mantine is definitely going to be a staple
yeah, it
in
is.
most
It is.
people's team.
It is.
So Obstagoon and Mantine is not. Driftblim versus Mantine is still going to be an iffy matchup. I think it's not
It is.
straightforward.
It is. It is. That ice beam is super effective against your Driftblim, but the ice wind is not going to be like it is neutral against the Mantine, and Mantine is pretty tanky.
Yeah, even if you land a Shadow Ball, I think it takes like
Yep.
55% of Mantine. Yeah, probably.
Yeah, so maybe close to that. I don't know for certain how
Yeah.
much, but yeah.
So
Well,
yeah,
I still
Mantine.
think, but I think Driftblim is solid.
Mm-hmm.
You can definitely find a spot in your team, but that's a good point to make, that you can you kind of have to follow the meta as the month goes along, and I would assume that would be a hard thing to grab your head around about how to actually do that, how to stay on top of the meta, and basically you can do that by practicing quite a lot, looking at a lot of different tournament results. Look at those social media sites. Look at Twitter. Look at YouTube. What kind of mons are people using and winning with? And to think that if people in your tournaments are going to maybe use that meta or counter that meta and go from that.
Yeah. Yeah. That's how you do it. How I usually try to do it is I just go to the Silph page, look for go to global rankings and see if anybody has done tournaments already. It might take like a 50 to 100 clicks, but you have to click.
Yeah.
there is no other way around it.
Yeah, that's also really good way to do it. But that could be very time consuming.
Or you can watch this podcast afterwards. We might do a mid-month podcast, and then we'll discuss the meta there. We won't discuss like stuff, but we'll just see how the meta has evolved, and that can work.
I saw one question about shift tree.
Mm-hmm.
That how well could it do in this meta?
Shift tree, again, Vigoroth.
Yeah, again. And I don't think, like, a lot of the flyers still counter it pretty badly, to be honest. And I don't think the dark type does really anything here advantageous.
Yeah. Unless the meta is going to shift towards having a lot of Alolan Marowak. What we might expect...
And even shift tree is not that great against it.
Yeah, exactly. Yeah, I'm not sure, to be honest. We'll see. We'll see how the meta evolves. We can't really say about Shift Tree as a mon, but as we all know, it's a very dangerous mon. You give it a little bit of energy, it will run through your team. But with the core being like Abomasnow, Galarian, Stunfisk, which are very. Abomasnow basically destroys. What is it? Shift Tree. Galarian Stunfisk is tanky, and it can definitely force you to shield more than you need to.
Yeah.
Let's see where the meta goes, and then we'll have to discuss. Next in my agenda is team building. So if anybody wants to make a team for themselves, you just have to drop 3 mons that you really like, and I will try to build a team around those 3 mons. Basically, I just get to choose the remaining 3. And then we will look at the threat score and we will see what you can do. All right, so we got like first 3 mons to build a team around. Vigoroth, Stunfisk, and Mantine.
So this is basically going to be the BBML team.
Exactly. You could actually throw whatever 3 Pokemon you want and then still play only these 3 mons and do well in this cup.
Yeah.
What I usually do is I immediately go into my PV Poke team builder. I will give the moves that I want to give for my Mantine. At least in the meta, it's going to be Bubble, Stunfisk, and Vigoroth.
Vigoroth.
Yeah. All right. So at the outset, what you can see is that the Flying Toilet has good matchup against all of these three.
Yeah, it has.
And also, you don't have a Mantine counter per se. So ideally, I would want to make something that's going to beat these. Yes, the potential threats show now that you lose to Razor Leafers, but I'm pretty sure there's not going to be a lot of Razor Leafers. What
I
you
would
need to
assume
look
not,
at, what you need to look when you go at your potential threats is the mons that are in the meta that you don't cover. Mantine is a good one that you'll have to look out for. Vigoroth, you have Mirror and Mantine, so you need to cover Vigoroth also. Emolga, if people have the dust to make it, or you're good at PvP IV Emolga. So let's say a mon that covers all of these mons would be Abomasnow. So you pick Abomasnow with it. And ideally try to have one with like very good IVs. Once you pick Abomasnow, what you will immediately notice is this team goes really weak to Vigoroth. So at this point, your main goal should be to pick a Vigoroth counter.
Mm-hmm.
At least, yeah, that's my thought process. Apparently, it's weak to Lugia too, basically with the shield bait. So we need to pick something that's going to be doing well against both of these mons, and the answer is definitely going to be Skarmory.
Can I actually made a small note in the from this team builder?
Go on. Yes, please.
So basically, the team builder shows there if what is the threat to your team, and it shows if that threat is really bad or okay. So that it shows the white circle if it beats your mon really badly, and the not so white circle, or just the outer rim of the circle when it's not that bad. And that's it's not always that simplistic, and that only shows the one shield scenario with perfect baits from either side. So that's still a really specific scenario, but it can still tell something. But you usually have to think about it more thoroughly about the matchups that are involved in the meta than just what the team builder suggests. But the team builder is always a very nice starting point to team building, for sure.
Okay, yeah, exactly. So please try to look for that too.
Or keep that in mind when you look at the team builder. But it is useful. It is useful.
Exactly. Another thing that you can know to more visualize what Tati said is, okay, what should you look at when you're going to pick between Skarmory, Altaria, Articuno, Emolga, or Drifblim? You see which of these mons beat the core meta the most. For example, Drifblim here has a better matchup against Lugia and Vigoroth. You're going to see this more than Grottle, Pelipper, Bellossom, or Bayleaf. So if I was building my team, I would be picking a Drifblim in here. And one of the best things about Drifblim is a very solid Vigoroth counter. And that's huge in this meta.
And even if you don't use Drifblim that much in your teams of 3, it's a really high bench pressure for your opponent to actually use that Vigoroth, especially in the safe switch spots.
Exactly. Back in the day when Hero Range was making videos, he would usually put the 6th slot as Spice Pick. And I guess that it just stuck with everybody. One of the reasons why that is because you will probably not find a mon that's going to cover all your weaknesses. So why they call it a spice pick is you can pick a mon that you think you need coverage for. At this point, what I usually see is, for me, it's very, very, very important that I have two mons in my team that can beat some of the core meta, always. The only thing that is missing here for me in coverage is to beat Mantine. I only have Abomasnow, and if the Mantine is running Air Slash, I lose as the Abomasnow. So I need something that's going to give a really strong answer to Mantine. So when push comes to shove, through this building process, I would definitely try to have an electric type. And that's one of the reasons why I ran, when I was building my team for the first time, I had double Stunfisks.
All right.
That's what I would be doing if I was building this team. It has a threat score of 535. It's not amazing. It's good. You can also play around with this last slot. Stunfisk is good, or you could go like really spicy and go Wiggles. Say attack weighted Wiggles maximize. And you could still have like a good score, but the bulk is you have a better score. Basically, because you pick up if you don't get the bait, you can pick up the Mantine matchup.
Yeah.
So something like that. So you just work around. You see which mons you have and what you really need to cover. Another good tip would be to always try to put in your IVs, because there is going to be a lot of IV dependent matchups and you should really need to look at it. I think Stunfisk has an attack breakpoint where it can beat an Alolan Marowak straight rock slide.
Yeah,
And if the people
I think it does. Yeah.
And if people were really looking at the Registeel versus Stunfisk matchup earlier in GBL, I think that's also an IV dependent matchup where you can go straight Earthquake or not.
I think it's always a Stunfisk preferred matchup, but Stunfisk wins it much better if it has that attack breakpoint.
Yeah.
Also, one thing would also be that since a lot of the teams are probably going to have that Galarian Stunfisk, you could also take a look at your attack IV or the attack stat that you're going to effectively have, and whether you are going to usually win or lose CMPs against opposing Stunfisks, especially if you basically face them in a straight-up lead matchup. Then it's always going to be a lot of CMP dependent. Or if you lose the CMP, you're going to need to land a bait to win that matchup.
Yeah, so that's where IVs come into account. I still remember for I don't know, Catacomb Cup or the one, Catacomb Cup, where you could use Lapras. I had like 15 attack Lapras, just so that I know I was going to throw the Skull Bash first.
Yeah,
that changes matchups. It really does.
It really does.
This 3 is enough. One of the comments makes this 3 is enough. It is a very strong core. It is a very, very strong core.
It is.
No doubt about it. I think yesterday while practicing, I just ran MANTINE, Vigoroth, and Alolan Marowak. Basically, I throw in Alolan Marowak and bait out whatever they have to counter my Alolan Marowak. And then use MANTINE to sweep the back, or use Vigoroth to sweep the back. Just save shields, because I know Alolan Marowak can force shields with the Shadow Ball. So
it can works. Do that to a lot of things.
And if you have a shield advantage, you do Vigoroth. Oh yeah.
But in general, yes, for sure.
So that's that. Vigoroth, if you give 2 shields to Vigoroth, it's gonna run through the opponent team. That's there's nothing they can do about it, unless they have a Charmer at the back. Is Bibarel a good spice pick? Strong, fast move damage. Yeah, that is interesting actually.
Bibarel.
But it's a normal water type, right?
So it is. So still gonna take a super effective from that counter damage and such.
Also Stunfisk is going to beat you to rock slides, I think, before you get to surf.
But but it still has to be a pretty advantageous matchup to the Bibarel.
To the Bibarel. I think it could be a good thing to finish off your teams.
Yeah, maybe if you're scared for for example, if you need that, maybe some sort of a Stunfisk and maybe some ghosts like Marowak or Drifblim coverage with and you wanna maybe have some sort of a little spicier mon. Sure. I don't really know its matchups that well against some of the flyers out there.
I think it wins Skarmory. That's for sure. Altaria it's going to lose. Mantine,
Yeah, definitely.
it will lose to Mantine too, unless it lands the Hyperfang, I guess. But by the time you land Hyperfang, you'll be debuffed twice by Bubble Beam.
Yeah. Yeah.
so,
Yeah.
so yeah, I wouldn't. Maybe Pelipper will have a good matchup because Pelipper is not that tanky, and Water Gun is still going to do quite a bit.
But still, that Water Gun is still resisted, and Wing Attack is not.
Yeah.
And Weather Ball is super spammy, even if you don't get the, even if you don't land the Hurricane.
Yeah, fair
So,
enough. It could have play, I think, but it will lose to Noctowl, from what I remember, because Noctowl is way too bulky. Too bulky.
It is. Noctowl is a monster.
Yeah, I loved that mon. I got my hands on a rank 1, and I think I swept the Sorcerer's Cup 6-0 by just using 3 mons. Just because I knew my Noctowl safe swap can beat most of the counters. It's like, okay, great. Yep. That's it, actually. Unless anybody else wants to build a team, I can do one
There'll
more.
be a couple of suggestions in my stream chat.
Awesome. So, let's do that.
Okay. There's one really spicy trio of mons from one of the Finnish community's spicy lovers. So Shadow Dragonite.
Oh my god.
Zangoose.
Okay.
And G-Fisk.
Okay. That's interesting. Very interesting. Let's say, I think the main weakness of this team is going to be maybe Mantine.
Yeah, I could see it. Yeah. Mantine and
Vigoroth. Vigoroth beats all 3.
Yeah, Vigoroth can deal with all 3 pretty well. Let's see. Shadow Obama Snow can also do pretty well.
Vigoroth, Obstagoon, Wigglytuff, and Altaria. And Obama Snow. You don't even need it to be a Shadow, because if you get your Dragonite locked on an Obama Snow, you just farm it down, I guess.
Yeah, sure. Yeah, I was just thinking about the Stunfisk matchup as well. With that.
So since he likes Spice, he can cover most of his weakness with a Togekiss.
Ooh.
So maybe he can put a Togekiss on there and then see what the raid team goes. Basically, you have no bulk at this point.
Yeah, I was just gonna say, who needs bulk in their teams?
Exactly. So I guess you
ideally have 2 shields. Use them.
So now we look at a bulkier Pokemon. So Alolan Marowak might fit the picture. This is one of those teams where you can use an Alolan Marowak, mostly because you're very weak to Abomasnow, and most of the other weaknesses you can cover by Togekiss and Galarian Stunfisk.
Yeah.
Also, Vigoroth weakness can be covered by both Togekiss and Alolan Marowak, so that's another good thing that's going to come out of this. And since you don't have...
How does the 2-shield matchup, or the general matchup with Vigoroth and Togekiss go? Since the body slams are so spammy, and Togekiss is not that bulky. I know the counter doesn't do pretty much anything, but body slams probably will do.
Well, you just Vigoroth loses in all shielding scenarios except the 0.
Okay.
0. And if you really want, you don't shield your Vigoroth and throw 2 body slams, but yeah.
Yeah, okay.
But Togekiss does... If I were the Togekiss, I was definitely shield and farm down, I guess, because you still have Flamethrower and Aerial Ace, and that's going to do quite a lot.
You can do.
I think.
Yeah.
So the only thing that this team is missing right now is bulk, which you can get from a Mantine. Let's see. Mantine can cover some of your weaknesses. Can cover Altaria quite okay. What else could really threaten this team? Obstagoon. And it can also cover Vigoroth in a way. So yeah, I think this is what I would run. If you really want to run such a spicy lineup, this is what you should run. Like really, this is super spicy. But I would advise running a normal Dragonite over Shadow.
Oh really? Okay.
Mostly because this team has no bulk whatsoever. So, but yes, Shadow Dragon is more damage.
I just happen to know that the guy that suggested his team is just really loves Shadow Dragonite and has been for a long time. So that's
okay, then definitely
certainly a reason
use
that he suggested it.
Yeah, then definitely use Shadow Dragonite, I guess. Worst case scenario, it's okay to lose by using what you love. It doesn't matter.
Yeah.
I've lost quite a lot of my games trying to use Cloyster.
Oh, okay, nice.
But hey, just play with what you like. That's why you play this game.
Yeah. And that trio was one of the suggested trios, and another one was we basically made a team that already covers these three, but Obama Snow, G-Fisk, and Vigoroth.
Oh, that's interesting. Is it a shadow or just?
Not Shadow, at least mentioned here.
Okay.
Maybe
At
just
the
normal
outset, yeah. So at the outset, the main weakness I see here again is Vigoroth.
Yeah.
You don't have an answer to Vigoroth. So ideally, it's going to suggest us to use one of Vigoroth's counters, which is going to be a Drift Blame or something like that. Even Machamp. I did not even know Machamp existed in this meta.
Ooh.
Because I'm stupid.
Machamp.
No, because I'm stupid. Calm down.
No, yeah. Yeah, I also thought that why Machamp exists in this meta.
Why am I just not running my Shadow Machamp?
Yeah, thought for a second that am I stupid as well, or
yeah,
but definitely.
Anyway,
not.
Yeah. Main weaknesses again, Lugia and Vigoroth, with Pelipper and Skarmory coming in, but I wouldn't worry about Pelipper and Skarmory right now because if you choose a team of three, you see first which the mons that have the most advantageous matchups to you. So I will, as long as I have one coverage in my team of three, I'm okay. So yeah, it's suggesting Zapdos or Emolga, but that would mean that let's say, would I run Zapdos and Emolga? Would you like to run Zapdos and Emolga?
They do some stuff that other mons maybe do not. So why not? But there's always the risk of running the electric flying type into the G-Fisk of the against the opponent's G-Fisk. So that is not a nice place to be at all. But I think they could still have play. Zapdos or either Zapdos or Emolga.
I'm just gonna put in Mantine because it does the work and it's more bulkier than a Zapdos.
Yeah. Okay.
So this is again going to be. I think it's going to evolve into a very meta line that you're going to see a lot in GBL. Actually, in this cup. Oh wow, that's a very very reasonable threat score, 518.
Yeah.
So now we just need to focus on covering the weaknesses of this team. Skarmory is a good pick, and they do suggest Emolga, but I'm still going to go Skarmory, mostly because actually, let's try it. I'm gonna go Emolga and see how this works out.
All right.
Maybe it's an amazing team, and the bulk drops from B to C immediately. But the threat score does drop.
Also, there's the issue that in a lot of the time in Silph Cups, the bulk just isn't there, I guess. Like, for example, if you compare to GBL, for example, where you can run anything you want. But in this meta, there are certainly some bulky options. So that's not generally the biggest issue to have basically no bulk teams.
I think you need bulk mostly because of Mantine, to be honest. It's going to be there everywhere, and if you don't have bulk to counter Mantine, it's I don't know, Mantine and Vigoroth. You need a counter for those.
Yes.
This is already looking out to be a very spicy team. It's now suggesting me to have Altaria.
Okay, well, I don't think Altaria is that spicy, to be honest, but
I like the Alolan Marowak suggestion, to be honest, rather than Altaria.
Okay, well, it can basically just destroy that Ferrothorn that it suggests as a threat there, for sure.
Yeah.
And
and it has play. It will force shields. Like, for example, Obama Snow is going to be...
And it is a solid Vigoroth counter as well. Not that solid, but at least a counter. And it can.
Yeah, you have.
And if there are some Lugias in the meta, it can throw that Shadow Ball into it.
Exactly. And let's see what the threat score ends up with. 512. That's very decent, actually. That's a very good threat score.
It is.
If you guys don't know what threat score is it's basically out of 1,000, I think. And the lower it is, the better your team is. So the closer towards 500 means that your team is better. Basically, I think you have more coverage. You can do damage to most of the mons very well, and you cover most of the mons in the meta very well.
Yeah. I would still note about the threat score that it isn't good estimation about how well your team does in general, but I think you can still run teams very effectively with a little higher threat score as well. I don't mean necessarily like something like 800 threat score or 700 or something like that. I don't mean it that way. But I mean like closer to 600 even. You can run pretty well in tournaments with even those teams. But if you have some specific strategy or something like that, you can definitely run a little higher team with a little higher threat score. But it is a nice thing to look at if that, like for example, if there are really meta dominant threats to your team, it will show you a higher threat score, and maybe you need to look up your team a little more if you see that.
Yeah, exactly. It's a good indication, but that's all it is. And as long as you don't overdo it and have a team that has a threat score of 700 or 650, you're fine. 570, I think, is respectable. 570-ish is good, I think.
Like my most important take-all from my threat score rant there was just that the lower the threat score does not specifically mean that your team is better than something else that has, for example, threat score of 5 higher. That really doesn't mean that the 5 threat score higher team is worse than the lower threat score team.
Yeah.
But that's my main point to make out from the threat score. It's a nice thing to look at and a nice indication about your general team coverage, but it's not the specific thing that you have to use a team that you get the lowest threat score with.
I guess that's most of the meta, unless if somebody else wants to pitch in something.
Yeah, there was also a really good example that they had a 635 threat score in Ferocious and swept. You can definitely do that.
Exactly. Sometimes it's about how you play.
Yes, and about your strategy, and if you see some hole in the meta and maybe you can utilize that and such, yeah, definitely.
And one last announcement is that, yes, we got an very early Sunrise Cup tournament. We're going to put it on YouTube, probably before or after this meta video.
Oh, nice.
You will see a trainer. He's a rival going up against aces and really, really highly ranked players. And he showed how to adapt to a loss in the first game really well.
Okay. Sounds interesting.
So please do take a look at it when it goes up. I'm not sure when. Amanda
so
will,
just for all the viewers out there, where can we look at that, or where can we find that video when it's up?
Yes, please subscribe to us. Our channel in YouTube is the PvP Academia. My PvP Academia. Basically, it's derived from the anime My Hero Academia. We share content. Right now, we're just focusing on GBL because we did not have any Silph content yet. Start putting out more and more PvP Silph-related videos. It's going to include meta-analysis, in-depth meta-analysis like we had here today. We're going to try to put different people from different elites from communities to discuss about mechanics, which I think is where a normal PvP player is lacking. How to do counts, what are turns, what are turn-based moves, when do you have to throw your moves to win some certain matchups. A very big example would be Lapras versus Venusaur. You can win this as a Venusaur, but it depends when you throw. Yes, please. I think Tati has our link on his, I guess, Twitch. Or you could just look for us as My PvP Academia, and that should get you to where we are.
Yeah, I can also definitely put a link of your YouTube into the Twitch chat as well, so that people can find it there very easily.
Yes, please.
Let me just look up your actual link, so then I can definitely put that into the stream.
I think if you just type My PvP Academia, you're going to only find us.
Yeah.
And a bunch
of
a bunch of anime clips.
Yeah, for sure. Okay, so here you are, everybody. So that's the channel link that you can go to see the My PvP Academia YouTube site to get all that sort of instruction about different mechanics and stuff with PvP and different metas that are going to develop.
Yeah, this podcast will also be there. We're going to put it on there. And if you want to listen to it again when you're, let's say, working and you want something in your ear, please download or just watch it again.
Yeah, just for a little bit talk of my stream. I also do a variety of Silph content and the GBL content as well. Maybe something that I just fancy on the day. But generally I am a Silph. I prefer Silph to GBL. So I probably mainly do Silph content from now on, at least when the season starts. But I will still do some GBL battles from now and then, for sure. And yeah, check me out if you want to see some battles, or maybe even I will probably do some tournament runs as well, like my analysis of my Silph tournament runs and such. So if you're interested, you're gonna follow me on Twitch.
Yeah, I watch him all the time. He runs some pretty good lineups. So you should definitely give him a watch. All right, thank you guys for tuning in. We can stay and discuss a little bit about Ultra League if you want. If not, we should close the podcast for now.
Okay, thanks for having me. It was such a nice thing of you to invite me into the podcast.
Thanks a lot for coming. It's really nice to have the thought process of somebody else who's such an accomplished trainer. Thank you for coming. Thank you for streaming us on Twitch. To the Twitch chat. Bye, guys.
Yeah. Thank you. Bye-bye.